All right, Jim. Thank you very much for joining me here for this discussion. It's always a pleasure to see your face, and
Good to see you too.
yeah. And so the reason I reached out to you is because obviously I respect your opinion a great deal on matters of, let's say, chaos, which I think the country is kind of and the world
Yeah,
itself is dealing with right
right.
now. And I think a lot of people are really focused on obviously the public health aspect of what's going on. I think the thing that I am curious about picking your brain on, and I'm doing this in a recorded fashion so that I can share it with my students as well, and obviously probably your students. Basically, I wanted to do this video because I think you have a unique perspective. I've been friends with you for a long time, known what your experience is. And so could you briefly give us who is Jim Kelly?
All right, thank you. Well, thank you for having me on. So I enlisted in '89 in the Marine Corps. I was in the reconnaissance community then, and then moved into the Army after an enlistment there. And then for the last 18 years, I have been in high security, both foreign and domestic, taking care of everything from security concerns for State Department and government functions to civilians. So really have some depth and breadth in security concerns when we have times of high stress where things like what's happening today occur.
Awesome. So I've got some questions from a list of questions from some of our students that I thought were really helpful. So I'll just go right down that list. We'll start at the top. And one is actually a colleague of mine, owns Gracie, New York. Mike Casey asked, not sure that I know what I don't know. Mr. Kelly, what sort of questions should we be asking? What concerns should we have? And lastly, do you see people worried or concerned about that they should not be worried about or concerned about? So a little bit to unpack
Okay.
there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, not sure that I don't know what I don't know. So I think just about everything that we deal with in life, there's always something that we don't know. There's always something hidden that is either purposefully hidden or it's just not disclosed because it has yet to be discovered. I think this is very much so in this case right now. We know very little about what the parameters are for this particular virus that is causing problems. And what we do know has given us cause for concern. I think that rather than trying to focus on what we don't know, because it's an impossibility to learn or find out what we don't know, otherwise it wouldn't be an issue, is to focus on what we do know. We do know what the carriers are. We do know what the length of time that you could be asymptomatic. We do know the disposition of your personal life and what your natural resources are that you have to leverage against the situation within your own sphere of influence. I tend to focus on what I do know. So I know where my family is at all times. I know what their disposition is. I know what the condition of assets and equities, like the gas in my car, the condition of my home, the safety of driving where I have to go to take my children to school or not, and what kind of obligations I have at work. So I focus on those things. I focus on what I do know about the disease as it's spreading, and I get that from the actual words that the government officials are saying. I tend not to pay attention to CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. I focus on what the words that are coming out of their mouths, and I focus on the actual government websites. I stay away from people's opinion, especially journalistic opinion. I think that's an easy way to get yourself into some trouble. I have experienced that in the fight on terrorism, where someone who absolutely does not understand the dynamic of what a mission comprises and then sensationalizes what their perspective is. And then all of a sudden we got a problem where in reality, we were just providing a finish that was directed by the government to take care of a bad terrorist or some other kind of action like that. Those people don't change. So I find that a journalistic perspective of what's going on is more often than not the right way to go. Pay attention to what's actually being said. They have daily briefs. It's coming from the president's mouth. And as far as leadership's going, the man doesn't know what his experts know. So he's putting his experts out there in front of the podium, and you're getting the actual knowledge from the leading expert at that time. I pay attention to that. So that's where I focus. I focus on what I do know and not so much on what I don't know. And with what I do know, I make good decisions. When it comes down to decisions, it's 51-49. I make a decision. If it's 51% one way, that's where I go. If it's the wrong decision, I just adjust. Rarely at the end of the day is something as good or as bad as it seems all day. That's why you feel better in the morning. So that's kind of where I go with the things that I do or I don't know. And the kinds of questions that we should be asking, I think I just listed that out. You want to know what is that you have. Take an inventory of the things that you have. What are the stocks inside your house? What are the things and conditions that you have inside your vehicle? Do you have jumper cables? Do you have oil? The things that you know that your vehicle might need. If it has a habit of burning oil, if it has a habit of having a problem with leaky tires, and you just want to know that, be aware of it so that you can make good decisions. With that kind of information, decision making is often more simplified. And those things are super simple to do. They're not complicated. And what kind of concerns should you have? I get asked that question from the nation's best war fighters. I get asked that question often. What kind of concerns should we have? And I tell them this: you should just strive for being the calmest person in the room. You shouldn't try to create a concern where there is no concern. Just be the calmest person in the room. Seek to understand what you can and make wise choices with the information that you have. As you move forward, because time marches on and you make these decisions, you will discover whether you made a good decision or not. Simply adjust. And it's really a recipe for success in all forms of life. If you go down a path that doesn't seem right, you got a bad gut feeling for it, it's probably not right. Simply adjust, make a better decision, and continue moving forward with that. And do I see people worried or concerned about things that they should not be concerned about? Absolutely. Absolutely. I see people really panicking because there's not going to be enough toilet paper. Well, it's a simple thing, right? Just because you're not going to be able to wipe your body after you perform a function does not necessarily equate to a catastrophe in your life, and that all things good are going to cease to exist. Really focus on what you can do to do well within your sphere of influence, which might be just you and your children, or you and your partner, or you and yourself in your home. It's a good start. Continue to do things, and don't forget, hey, you're not alone. So trying to be super selfish of saying any kind of mindset where I got to get mine, that's a bad way. We are all in this together. This has not happened in modern history. We are all in this together. It is a pandemic. So everyone in this planet is affected. So you want to make sure that you don't lose the common humanity of compassion. If you have resources that you can share with another, share. We do not have a limited capability of production so far.
Right.
So right now, be calm in what you do. Be wise and judicious in what you feel like your purchasing needs are. Don't purchase with the full purchase power that you have. Be wise in those things and be reserved in your action. I think those are the things that would do people well to start out with, just on the outset of like, what do I not know? What should I be concerned with? And what should I not be concerned with? I mean, right now, if you're in the high risk zone, you probably have concern, and we know what the limiting factors are. Don't associate with those that might infect you. When you do, be realistic about what the symptoms are. And that's been clearly delineated by CDC. You can get that information online. It's been publicly available, and it's a solid source of information. Knowing whether you have the disease or not. I hear this question of like, I should get tested. Okay, let's say you get tested and you're a healthy person right now. You test positive or you test negative, but you have zero symptoms. Well, we've just wasted a test.
Right.
There's no need for that. So I think in all aspects of this kind of concern, just be calm in what's going on, be realistic with what your situation is, and don't make rash decisions. And things will tend to turn out better than not if we kind of allow ourselves to give into panic, whatever the kind of action is. Panic actions or poor decisions.
Right. Yeah. Good advice. And to me, it seems like, you know, I don't know, jiu-jitsu people in general, at least ones that have done it for a good bit of time, I think have a fairly healthy, I don't know, a level of confidence. And you know, maybe that's not always the case. Maybe it's not the same as you know, with the folks that you deal with on a daily basis. But I think, you know, I think mentally being prepared, I think, is really an important thing, and just being able to step back and just take a breath, right? Just relax and
Right.
and like you said, make a good decision. So let's go on to Allison had a question here. 5 top items to have on hand should you need to bug out and leave your home, work, car, and head out on foot. Can be more than 5 items, just a starting point. And I believe that would be things would have to go quite a bit further south for us to have to bug out. But there's the question.
Right. Yeah, a very common question. I get asked that question a lot. So whenever I get asked that question, I have to ask a question in order to answer that is, what is the decision? Why did you feel the need? What was the driving factor that said to you, hey, I got to get out of here. I got to go out on foot, and I can only grab a few things. So we would have to suppose that a series of cascading failures just took place on a grand scale for you to feel like, I got to get out and brave the elements alone, and I'm going to grab a few things. However, that being said, let's just say that the zombies are coming and this thing mutates into something that no one could have thought of, and now we got to run for our lives. Well, it comes down to basic life preservation. You're going to need something that's going to be able to keep you warm. So warm jacket or clothing, the elements, water, something that's going to destroy if it rains. So you're going to need a rain jacket, a warm coat. You're probably going to need something that's going to be able to purify water. You can go days without eating. You can't go very long without drinking good water. So you're going to want to have a capability of sourcing good, healthy water. You're going to have something that's going to give you the capability of sourcing food. So once you have your body taken care of, that's number 1. Number 2 is water. Number 3 is sourcing food. You want to make sure to be able to knife, a pocket knife, I fixed blade Bowie knife. I usually have a multi-tool, something that I can cut something I can twist something I can dig a little bit of hole or bore a hole in something if I want to make an articulating joint, those kinds of things for a trap, so to say. That would be 3. 4 would be the ability to have navigation. So if the zombies were attacking, we're probably in a situation where your phone's probably not going to last very long. Map and compass is probably a very good idea. Some sort of way of navigating, because you're probably trying to go to some place of safety or relative security. So safety would be a point destination, like I'm going to my mom and dad's place because they got a 1,000-acre farm, and that's where we're going to be safe. So you're going to go to a location or an area. Well, I'm going to go to the national park because I can survive in the mountains, something like that. So you're going to need a capability of navigation. And then the last thing that I would do would be some sort of personal safety, a weapon of some sort. And there's all kinds of choices, which leads into some other questions of like, what kind of weapon do I choose? Well, really the basic answer to that is, what kind of weapon can you use? So those are the kinds of things that I would use. And that's it. That's the decision matrix. So if I was at Walmart and I had to leave right then, because that's where I was at whenever the parameters presented themselves that indicated that I needed to leave, well, then that's how I would make those choices. Can I take care of my body? Can I get myself some water? Can I make myself some food? I have some way of navigating where I'm going to go, and then can I have some way of defending myself? Everything else I can make with that kind of that kind of combination of solving those factors right off the bat. As soon as I have those 5 things, then I'm gonna start moving out. And then you would figure out what's closest to you. Can I grab my kids? Can I grab my wife? Can I grab my husband? Where do I need to go? What's the next decision of getting to relative safety? That's kind of how I would look at that.
Awesome. We talked about it the other day, just being out in public, and it's crazy just the amount of fear that you see on people's faces. At what point does that become a bigger problem? And as far as like,
What?
let's say, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm noticing that myself. I've been in many situations all over this planet where groups of people are placed under enormous stresses, and those stressors might be a factor of losing life, disease, the oppression of the government, terrorist activity, criminal activity, where people are fearful of not only the personal safety, but are under threat of death every moment of the day, but they can't even feed their family, let alone themselves. So that kind of stress produces a real debate kind of action within groups of people, and starting to notice symptoms of those things. And my influence is only so far. I want to say, well, you want to be as calm as you possibly can, even if you are in a stressful situation. You want to be the calm person, because if other people start acting rationally, they make unwise choices. You don't want to be caught up in the mob mentality. You want to make sure that you're as calm as you possibly can be, so that you can make as sound decisions as you possibly can, given the factors that are presented to you at that moment. That's the best way of survival. So as I go out, and I'm not going out any more than I absolutely need to. I've been prepared. I wouldn't say that I'm a prepper, but I'm prepared because I've lived life under these kinds of conditions where this was a real possibility, and it was the nature of the conditions of places where I went to work. If people start looking like they're starting to be stressed, you will feel it, you will see it, you'll have a sense that this is not a good place for you to be. You need to calmly remove yourself from that situation. You can always come back to the grocery store. You can always go back to the gas station. You are breathing right now, and the idea is to make sure you keep putting good air into your lungs and that you're airtight, that you don't have anything coming out of you that shouldn't be coming out of you. So if it's a bad spot, preserve your safety, preserve the safety of your family, remove yourself from that situation as calmly as you can, because if you are the person that notices that this is going to be a very excitable panic situation, you don't want a person that starts the stampede. So you want to calmly remove yourself from those kinds of places and be sensitive to that. Don't be so focused on what it is that you're doing and your experience of everything. Pay attention to your situation. Situational awareness is crucial in these kinds of times. So you often will have indicators. There will be nonverbal indicators that people are starting to exhibit stress. Pay attention to that. If you notice that, you need to make a decision of whether that is time for you to remove yourself from that location or that situation or those actions. Don't get into an argument with people. If people are stressed out and you want to argue over what Cabbage Patch doll you want for your kid and you're trying to fight for that, that's probably a poor choice.
Right.
You want to make sure that you don't incite the possibility or give the possibility for violence to occur. You always want to make sure that you're avoiding those kinds of things. And there are cues and silent indicators that we've all grown up with. We know what it looks like when our brother is about ready to hit us.
Yeah.
And you can avoid that. And I would encourage people to pay attention to that, have good situational awareness, and remove yourself from those kinds of conditions.
Excellent. So I think we've actually covered, I was reading through some of these questions here, and I think we've actually already covered some of them. So we'll fast forward. One was, what are the sources of actual viable information, which you covered? When is it best to stay put, go out, or get out? And what are the signs to look for? I think you kind of just described that. How best to reassure others, maybe falling into this hysteria, which I think you covered that as well. One of my students, Ernie, asked, what are the merits of working with your neighbors versus lone wolfing it? And I think you kind of talked about that a little bit as well, as far as our our common humanity and compassion. And if you have something, and somebody needs it, share it. Like I've got toilet paper. We're good. And if you need some, I can share it with you, So I guess we'll have to wrap it up here soon, but are there any things that you think that the average person who has not thought of these things before? I mean, I'm a little bit of, obviously I'm not a warrior, but I have the mentality of, I've got my family, I have to protect them. And I've, tried to develop skills to do that as best as I possibly can. What are certain things that people who maybe have not even thought of this stuff before, prepared in any way as far as personal security, as far as being in their homes? Most people are in their homes now. Are there certain things, and I guess we don't have to be really, I don't think it can be, I don't think anything can be too basic, but basic things that most people who have not thought about these things before can do to protect themselves in their homes that maybe they're not doing now.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that you can actually do depending on how far you want to take that. For me, I make sure that I know where the doors are, so I know whether they're locked or they're shut. I make sure that I have the windows and the doors as my first line of security. So I'm going to know somebody wants to come into my home, and that's really what we're talking about. Is someone wants to come and take something that I have because they don't have it, and outside of the common criminal element. So we're in these times, and I have something, and someone else wants to take it. A locked door often is the first line of defense, and it's a good deterrent. You want to make sure that if you can, I would keep a light on at one of like the door, the lamp, or something like that, the porch light, because it provides lighting that obscures capability for people to look inside the home, as much it is for you to have all the lights turned out on the outside of the home and then have lights on the inside of the home. It's like the reverse of a one-sided mirror. So something common like that. You want to make your home look as nondescript as you can, so that it doesn't look like you have something that someone doesn't have, that it doesn't present or plant in their mind the idea that they want to take what you have. So that kind of covers a broad range of things. So if you have a generator, I probably wouldn't have that running on the outside when you're the only person in town who has a running generator. That's an indicator that something's different, and someone who has the likelihood or would like to take over what you have, that would be an indicator. I would prevent those sorts of things. As a habit, I sleep with a firearm next to me and a flashlight, because I want to make sure that I positively identify if there's going to be an intruder inside my home and it's not my kid. So you want to make sure that if you're going to use a firearm inside the home, I would absolutely suggest to you that it's essential that you have some way of lighting what it is, so that you can positively identify what that threat is. It may be someone who is drunk, who didn't understand that your house wasn't his house, and they decided, well, since I locked myself out of my house and it's not his but yours, and he breaks into it, and maybe something like that, which I have lived through and has happened. So you want to make sure you're not shooting somebody just because you're in fear of your life.
Right.
There is time that you might be able to use so that you can clearly identify what that threat is. And it's kind of what we're talking about. It's like, what do I do whenever I'm in fear of my life? Well, make sure that you actually are in fear of your life, and then do the best that you can to make the best decisions to save your life. Lots of ways of doing it. Jiu-Jitsu is one of those things. As a Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, my life has changed. So I have a clear understanding of what predatory behavior looks like and what actual threats are, and then just what just getting a tooth knocked out is. So having myself choked unconscious is very different than someone trying to knock out my teeth. All right. I will die with one and I won't with the other. So just because you're having a confrontation at the gas station doesn't give you the authority to poke holes in someone. So you want to be realistic with that. Outside of that, hey, park your cars close to your house. Make sure that you have as much gas. Right now, gas is a great price, not because of the viral infection, but other factors in the world. Make sure you don't have it any less than 3/4 every time you go to park it. Park it in a way so that if you need to get out of your parking space and you have to load something, that you can access the loading and get out of there without trying to back out. Make sure it's locked. Lock your doors and windows. Use your shutters and blinds,
Yep.
and just be mindful of what the situation is inside of your home. I think that's a good start. Outside of that, there's all kinds of resources online about what home security is. Right now, there's a lot of preppers out there, probably every single one of them saying, I told you so. And they have invaluable resources
Yes.
that if you feel the need to, you could school yourself up really pretty quickly and thoroughly with those kinds of resources. I think most of them are good. Just be wise and prudent with what it is. The zombies aren't coming down on us.
Right.
It's a virus. We're going to live through this.
Yep.
We need to be able to do this and not lose our humanity and help one another out.
Beautiful. Well, I think we're coming to the end of our time. I just want to make sure, just thank you very much for taking the time out to do this. We may have more questions, or people may throw more questions out there on YouTube or whatever. So are you open to another discussion at some point?
Oh, absolutely. Happy to help you guys out.
Awesome. Well, Jim, I really appreciate you. It's great to see your awesome bearded face, and hope you're all doing well.
Right. I appreciate it. It's been awesome talking with you.
Yeah, always good, brother. Well, take care of yourself, stay healthy, and we'll talk soon.
All right. You do the same.
All right. Bye-bye.